We love to see people get back up after difficult things have happened to them. That resilience, that drive to continue on. Well, today on this episode of the Live Faith First podcast, we talked to Ken Miller, and he spent 20 years in street level, as he calls it, addiction, meaning that his addiction sent him to the streets. He was not able to function and keep jobs. It's just not how his addiction worked. And in those times of incarceration and addiction and so on, he eventually, after 21 years, he made his way out. And here he is today, telling his story of resilience and growth, grace and mercy that has been shown in his life. So sit down and enjoy this episode of the Live Faith First podcast. Resilience is a characteristic we love to see in people. It's inspiring, it's encouraging, it gives us hope when people pop back up. But in order to be resilient, it means you've probably been knocked down. Today we have Ken Miller with us, and he spent some time down, only to see grace, mercy, hope, and resilience play out in his life. So Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation as well. Now, you open your book with a story of getting kicked out of a broom closet where you'd been sleeping, a place near the bottom that started you back up and out of addiction. But before we get there, and I definitely want to hear that story, would you give us the cliff notes of your life? Where were you born? Where were you raised? How'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. So I'm 63 years old, and my name's Ken Miller. I live in Blaine, Washington today. I am very successful, and I am God-centered. Let's get that out first. Mm-hmm. The past in the temporal world, and we'll talk a little bit about temporal versus spiritual world as we go along. I had a series of experiences. So 1962, my mother was a white teenage runaway female, and my father was a black married pimp and drug dealer in New York City. I am the union of that engagement, and I was put up for adoption at birth. Mixed children were not very common. She's a teenage girl in Queens, New York. So I did 6 years of foster homes, which is a big part of my story. It's not a big part of my story, so much as it is a big part of who I am and how I looked at the world, especially as a child, and probably even into my 20s and 30s. Then I was adopted at age 6, lived upstate New York, moved to Anchorage, Alaska, grew up in Alaska. I was precocious as a child, well-read, and by the time I was 17, I was a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard. I went to Dartmouth College for my Ivy League degree. I got out, unfortunately, what I tell people, with a degree in fraternity, with a minor in drinking. And so I didn't utilize my time as well as I could have, but I got out with my diploma and went into the corporate world and also went to treatment for alcoholism as a graduation present. Stayed sober for 2 years. I then relapsed, chose to relapse, and I was to spend the next 21 years homeless on the streets and or incarcerated and or in treatment for the drug addiction and alcoholism. In 2007, I was released from prison after doing 3 years on the last. I've been to prison 3 times and came out with no skills, but I had God and I was centered. I'm not going to say I was perfect because I chose to use my will or to engage my will in opposition to God's will. And that caused me much heartache and angst, but I have not picked up a drug or alcohol volitionally or voluntarily. And so I can say I'm celebrating, 21 years, coming up on 22 years. And today I'm a much, much better person and a much better representation, and this is the term I use, of God's will for me. Mm-hmm. And I've defined that. I walk in it, and I like who I am today. I'm very, very comfortable in my relationship with God and with others, which is very, very important too.
Yeah.
That's a cliff note. And that was cliff. That's cliff note.
Yes. And there's a whole book that goes into a lot more, and we're going to go into more of that story. And what I'll tell you is I love hearing the story of redemption. I love hearing the story of reconciliation, grace, mercy, all of those pieces. And that story is only powerful against the story of brokenness or addiction, or, you know, kind of the life you led for that 20 plus years, it sounds like. And so we will get to the redemptive side of all this and how God has, you know, been with you and what that's looked like. But I would love, if you don't mind, kind of starting a little bit with kind of college, because it seems like between your college and your childhood home, it kind of set this foundation that ended up with responses of, you know, addiction and kind of living the street life. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So it begins at age 6. So I go through foster homes, and foster homes, at least in the New York system, they're at the state level. Foster homes is that you spend a certain amount of time, usually a month, a few weeks, maybe a longer time, with a foster parent or parents. It's almost always a couple, and they're getting paid, but their investment in you, because they work with a lot of kids. It may not be as strong as someone that has a biological connection and or adoptive connection, because I'm a foster child. Then you move to adoption. So having done that when I was age 6, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, couldn't tell time, couldn't tie my shoes, had never been exposed to church, at least that I can remember as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. And then I went and was adopted by Irene and Sam Miller. And it was interesting because I was exposed, but very, very lightly, to church. And the church, and it's nothing against the church, because you can be strong in all the Christian churches. I'm not a big one on the different sects and why Baptist is better than Methodist or whatever. I grew up as a Quaker, which is very unusual in the African American community. But I was upstate New York. I was the only black male in my school, all that good stuff. But I grew up Friends, Society of Friends is the Quaker church, but very irregular. I might go to church 2 or 3 times a year. Okay. And no Bible study. So I didn't really have a foundation of the church. Or really the word is probably a better term. And we will talk about the relationship with God. So anyway, I learn how to read, and because we're coming to the college. But by the time I went to college, I was broken. I was broken as a young man. I'm 17 years old, very immature in a lot of ways, and that I wasn't comfortable in the adult world. I'm literally a child because I had so much fear growing up. My father was an alcoholic. He was a violent alcoholic. And a few years later, he was to shoot my mom 6 times and then come to shoot me. But the gun jammed, so that didn't happen. But he did shoot my mom and hit her 5 times. Wow. So I had to deal with that situation right after graduating from college. But I had grown up with him beating me. I hid out my senior year in high school. Half of my senior year, which should be one of your best years, I'm hiding, secretive, so my father can't find me and my mom. Okay, my mom set it up. Anyway, that was not a way to spend your senior year. So anyway, I go off to Dartmouth, very immature, and just with no spiritual foundation whatsoever. And so what that did for me is that it made it easy to find somewhere where I felt like I could belong. So if I'm in the hood, I may join a gang. Well, I joined a gang. It's called a fraternity. But it's a gang. We have an affinity. It's a group of men, and we're in pursuit of usually pleasure in some aspect, usually with drinking, partying, or girls or women. Okay? So that's what we're about in the fraternity. And there is a bonding and all the camaraderie. Great. I'm still friends with many of my fraternity brothers. And I don't blame the frat. I don't blame anything. It's just my truth. So I go in there, no spiritual foundation whatsoever, never stepped into church in college, or even when I would come home. No, not at all. Because now I'm into the drugs and the alcohol and the sex. Those are the things that I'm seeking. But I'm really seeking belonging. I'm really seeking belonging. So anyway, I get out of college, I go to treatment, and I joined the anonymous programs. And there's a spiritual aspect to the anonymous program, which I still love. I still go to my meetings. I don't name them. I don't say that I'm a member of XYZ, but people who know what I'm talking about when I say the anonymous programs. And it did bring me to an understanding a bit about spirituality. And then I was then to relapse. And of course, I'm not doing anything in the spiritual realm. I'm doing the opposite. Because my battle, and really, this is, again, my opinion, the battle as humans is the battle between self-will and God's will. And the opposition, if they're in opposition. My will today, 99% of the time, is in alignment with God's will. I know what God's will is. I know what that is. I can define it for me. So anyway, I get out. I spend the next 21 years, struggling. And until that day in October of 2004, where I had and this is always interesting how you say this. So we talk about, the burning bush and Paul and all that stuff, but it wasn't a bush. It was me sitting on a bunk, and I had communication. I tell people, it's not that God had been trying to talk to me through other people and through experiences or even internally communicate with me for years because I'm one of his children. But I was not willing to listen. So you can listen, but then willing to do what the desired thing that he wants me to do, okay, which is God's will. So that day in October of 2004, when I got sober let me put it, I last used on September 22nd of 2004. I'm in jail, going to prison for the sentence of drug sales. And I had a communication with God. And it was the most beautiful thing. And I tell everybody, almost every podcast I'm on, I share that story of what he told me, of what he communicated with me. And the key thing is I believed. I had enough faith. We talk about the mustard seed of faith, but I had enough faith that I'll do it. I'll do it. And there have been times I've not done it, and especially early on, because you go from a period of all about self, all self-interest, all about the two things that we do with our will in opposition to God's will are two things. We're either running away from discomfort or pain, or we're running toward pleasure. That's in opposition to God's will. Okay. And I was all about that, 100% like that. Every once in a while I did a semi-nice thing, but it was because it made me feel good to do that semi-nice thing, okay, on the streets or in the penitentiary. But then I did that, and so I went from 70-30, 70 me, 30% God, and then, it was more like 70 God, 30, but I still kept that for about, I kept a chunk for about 10 years. And then I pretty much have let go of it all about 5 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. And just to, again, kind of set some context here. Tell us a little bit about that 21 years of addiction. So my question really is, what was the life like? You talk a lot about hustling and panhandling and
so what was the
pimping and some of those things. And so can you give us just a little bit? I mean,
Sure.
it isn't every day that you have somebody who, give me some flavor. That's what I'm looking for.
So I am a street level addict and alcoholic. And that's a different type. There are people who are alcoholics who still have a family. There are alcoholics. There are drug addicts that still keep a job. I can't do any of that. I am in the missions. I'm in abandoned homes, abandoned cars, a lot of motels. And in there, I can't work legally because I don't have the capability to show up on time or to do something because I'm either high or in pursuit of money for drugs. So therefore, I commit crimes. And I remember one time I looked at it was a thing called the Washington State Blue Book, which is like it's a book that shows all the different felonies in the state of Washington. And you have to have a code because it's a code. And I was like, man, I've done like 26 different felonies. That was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That was 1990 when I looked at that blue book, when I picked up my first felony. So I've had felonies for burglary, I've had felonies for drug possession, and I've had felony for drug sales. Those are the ones they caught me. They caught me. Okay. There's a lot of things I did. They did not catch me. And as you know, if you've read my book, I was a pimp. I was an armed robber. I was a kidnapper. I've hurt people physically. That was about me. And I can tell you why. I'm not going to give you any rationalization or justification for the actions I did, but that's who I was as an addict and alcoholic without being God-led.
Yeah.
Because if I was God-led, I would not engage in these behaviors because I know that's not God's will. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me just put it where you said, tell me what your life was. And I was like, it wasn't life. Tell me what and nothing wrong with the way you said it, but tell me what your death of 1,000 cuts was like. Because it's a death of 1,000 cuts. And it cuts you physically. I've had my jaw broken twice. I've had my eye orbital broken. I've had my nose broken in physical fights. I put people in the hospital also. I've tried to commit suicide. So that's the ugly of it. And it is a death of 1,000 cuts because what happens is each of those body blows, each of those cuts takes a little more out of you. And at some point, you lose hope of there any chance of the future not having pain in it. And that's where I was at. And so suicide becomes a viable alternative. And so I've tried that on a couple of occasions. And, but, God, wow, what a beautiful, I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here giving back, giving out.
Yeah. And that is the beauty of the redemptive story, right? Is that all of the things you said you've done are not beyond God's forgiveness, first off, but beyond forgiveness, it's also acceptance. And I think that's a big thing because, I can forgive somebody, but still keep them at a distance. I think that's a human way when we've been hurt and so on. But God's kind of forgiveness is so radical because not only does it say, I forgive you, but it says, come over here and give me a hug. You've hurt me. You've tried to hurt me, but not only do I forgive you, but I accept you. I bring you close. I like to see God giving me a hug just because that's what I personally want, whatever your visual of God's acceptance looks like. But I mean, that is the amazingness of God's redemption, that it's not human. It's not human. It's divine. It's something that
I like something you just said. So you're talking about the hug. What is the picture that you have? And my picture is, so I have a 2.5-year-old grandchild, and we're going down the stairs, and he grabs for my hand. He wants that safety of walking down the stairs, and also that connection. And that's my walk with God. He's holding my hand. Yeah. I'm a child. And I use that term all the time, a child of God. And that's the way I visualize it. I am a child. There's a whole talk that I give sometimes on because I've done a lot of study on the word humble and humility. They're a little different, but what does it truly mean to have reverence for something greater than? I think that's what's humble. Because there's an old saying they used to say, "You're a humble servant," and that's what they would address the king, because you are I'm talking about medieval England. you are a charge or you belong to the king. Do you know, God, this is a funny aside, but I'm just going to say it was a capital offense in medieval England to attempt to commit suicide.
Oh.
And the reason is because you did not own your body. The king did. You were a subject of the king. So, and I was, so if you weren't successful, they would help you. And it might not be the way you wanted to do it, but you couldn't commit suicide. And so I always thought that was fascinating.
Wow.
But again, the thought that I'm a humble child or I am a humble servant, but because I have reverence to your position, okay, and I do, but I'm reaching my hand up, and walk with me, because that's what God told me. That was a conversation, and it's so funny in a way. I wish I could remember word for word, but I don't. I remember I can picture myself lying on the bunk, Unit 13, Par Boulevard Jail in Sparks, Nevada, and having this communication. And the communication pretty much is that I will be there for you. We can do this. We can do this together. I'm not going to say it's going to be without discomfort or pain. And I'm talking about the journey until I transition. But I will be there for you. Yeah. Follow my lead, follow my will, to the best of your ability. And I will be there. And once I got that, I'm not going to say it's been, peaches and cream, because it hasn't.
Right.
But I've never had to pick up. There's two things I tell people. I have not picked up a mind-altering chemical volitionally. I've been on some mind-altering chemical. I came off of surgery. But I told the doctor, my wife handled the medicine. No problem. Okay, move on. Doesn't change my sobriety date. But the other thing I tell people is that I haven't put hands on anybody in 22 years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That, for me, is growth. I haven't threatened anybody in 16. But I about 10 years, I still had to grow. But I physically haven't done anything. I haven't threatened anybody, I think, in about 16 years.
Yeah. Wow. Just a comment that kind of was rolling around in my head. It's interesting. We use these words. We use the word servant. We use the word child. The Bible calls us ambassadors. And I find it so interesting that our relationship with God, that all three of those work, because I wouldn't consider myself a servant of my parent, even though as growing up, I did things around the house. I helped out, all of those things. I also wouldn't call myself necessarily a servant of my wife, even though I do serve her and cook and all of those things too. But we get to be a child, like just this accepted, put in God's family, taking on God's last name. We are identified as his child. Like that is who we are. At the very same time, we are considered as servant and we're considered as ambassadors. And in the Christian world, that all lines up. Somehow it all works, even though kind of on the earthly side, you're kind of one or the other. Like if you're a servant, you're probably not a child. If you're a child, you're most likely not a servant. You might be an ambassador as a child. But even that carries a little bit different, and that you're going to go with the influence of whatever your family's put on you as you grow up. And so, anyway, I don't have a question out of that. Just an interesting thing to me of the ways we are referred to in relation to our relationship with God. But I do have one. I'm going to have a few more questions for you. But would you talk a little bit about the cycle? You crack was your drug of choice, it sounds like. So, from the outside looking in, you're like, you talk about the downs, how like after you're done the high, there's this lowest low, you're feeling the shames and your body and depression and all of those things. And yet the idea is, well, let me just go find more so I make this go away. Would you talk a little bit about that cycle of addiction, like in the moment of kind of what drives you to go seek it, and kind of that part of the experience? So, yeah.
So That's a lot. There's a lot to it. There's compulsion, there's obsession. But another word I really love is habit. That's a term I used to use for heroin addicts. He's got a habit. But really, that's what we have is we have a drug habit many times, which means I have habitual actions that I undertake to successfully, quote unquote, navigate this world of being a street level drug addict. Plus, you got to understand, I have people around me who are co-signing on my behavior because they're addicts too. Okay? There's people that look in abhorrence. There's people that look in fear. There are people that look in disdain. Okay, cool. But I got a bunch of people and we knew we were addicts. A lot of people say, well, once you find out you're an alcoholic or an addict, so I'd look at you and say, what up, crackhead? They look like me, what up, crackhead? We know we're crack addicts.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the cycle for me, I'll take 90% of the time on the street, it was I came to, usually, I don't know, whatever, 10, 11, whatever time. Yeah, usually a lot of times I'd come to it like 9:30, 10 if I hadn't been up all night, because you got to be out of the motel at 11 if you had a single night room. And a lot of times we had single night rooms because that's all we could afford. And I would go to the mission or to the soup kitchen and have lunch and see everybody in there is alcoholics or drug addicts. Like everybody. Some of them don't have it to the extent that you do, but that's why they're going to a soup kitchen. They're not going there because they lost their job yesterday and they're just grabbing a bite to eat before they go back to work. Don't work like that. At least the soup kitchens I go to, I've been to many states and cities and soup kitchens. So anyway, then we go there, and then now it's 1:30, 2 o'clock. We have no money. I had no money. And what I would do is I would panhandle. And I would go out there, and I was very good at it. And you're like, how can you be good at it? I know how to panhandle. I've always been in sales. I'm still in sales. And I panhandle, and my goal was to come up with 93 cents. And that got me a 32-ounce natural ice, Bush natural ice. 93 cents for a 32-ounce, not a 40. People always think it's 40s. The 40s are too expensive. That's Old English and these other beers that we would have. And that's all I needed was 93 cents. So I had my first beer. I made share it with someone. Again, I did a lot of sharing. I remember there was a part of me there's always been a part of me that's been nice. Even on the streets, I would share dope. I would share my alcohol. Anyway, so now that we're doing that, I'll panhandle, I might get $5. I'll get 3 or 4 of them and sit there on the corner or places we sit and we drink our beers. Then it'll get around 5. And then it gets interesting. Because at 5, people start getting off of work who are looking for something. And that's what I did. That was my main thing, is I was a hustler. So what a hustler does is I provide what you need. And you're either going to be looking for drugs or sex. Those are the 2 things. So if you're looking for drugs, I know where to get all the different drugs. I know who's dealing, da-da-da-da. And if you're looking for sex, are you looking for a man or a woman? If you're looking for a woman, I know the girls. I know all of them. They know me. If you're looking for a guy, here I am. And that was the other thing. I was a male prostitute. And then, so what I'm trying to do now is get enough money for crack. Then I get enough money for crack from either facilitating a drug deal, because the drug dealers don't want to be on the streets because they're a drug dealer, but I know what motel rooms to go to, and I'm the in-between, and then they will give me some. I then start the smoking of crack, try to get a room. Cheapest room we could get back in, a lot of this is in the 90s. I remember I went down in 2004. I could get a room for about $18. It's about the cheapest. Wow. Now I can't get a room for 18, but I knew, of course, where all the motels, the cheap ones were. Right. And we'd move around if we get too hot. And then we wash, rinse, and repeat.
Okay.
And
Do
the
it again the next day.
hustling and the tricks and all, I could do that all night, unless I got a bunch of dope and then I smoke.
Just, yeah.
Terrible living,
And
terrible life.
yeah. I mean, we all have our habits and our cycles, and some of them are healthy and some of them are not. And it sounds like when you're spending all of your habits in the day are surrounding kind of one thing that just is not, it's not good. It's not healthy for you. You said you went to rehab. How many times? Was
14,
it 11, 14?
inpatient. I don't count outpatient. Inpatient 14.
So in the 20, just so we're kind of clear, so in the 21 years of addiction, 14 times you went to inpatient rehab, again, not counting, other, whatever the programs.
From outpatient.
Tell me about the first 13. What was it, that didn't stick? You kind of think like,
okay, all right, you go here. So there's two different types of treatment, and I'm just talking about in these parameters. There's inpatient where you live there, and then there's outpatient where you go there for the meetings, for the counseling, and so outpatient usually you're in a much better shape because you're driving to the outpatient or walking to the outpatient or taking the bus, and you do the outpatient. Inpatient is a higher level, more intense because you're living there with other people in recovery. So outpatient, always the minimal outpatient is 21 days because it has a lot to do with insurance. But the usual is 21 or 28, which for a profound addict is too short. Okay. So we used to call those spin drives. Yeah, I'm going to go to a spin drive. I'll do my 21 3-week, but it's a break, get a little rest, 28 days, and then move on. Then the next one level is a 90-day. And that can a lot of times for the profound addict can get you a potential foundation, potentially remain clean and sober. And then the other ones are multi-year, year or multi-year. I've done all three.
Okay.
And so the last one was a year-long program. So I did a year on the last one, but I've done 21, 28s, 90s. I've done up to about a year and a half.
Yeah. And was there a theme? So after rehab, you're starting with normal, whatever, I'll say normal life, but anyway, life, hopefully sober life. What were the things that pushed you back towards addiction again? What was the things kind of each of those times? Was there a theme in there? You're like, it was an emotional thing. It was a shame thing. It was a circumstantial. I just started hanging out with the wrong people, again.
Yeah, that's always one. So so when I talk to individuals that are in treatment, inpatient treatment, I'll go out to a treatment center and talk to them. I said, there are two things that will almost give you 100% chance of relapse. And those two things are, number one, anger, and number two, sex. Because they both shut down the rational part of your brain. Because you made a rational decision. I'm in too much pain. I want to get out of this pain. I want to get my kids back. I want to get my wife back. I want to be a contributing member of society. I want to get back into the church. Da, 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 da. That's a rational decision. Okay? You get angry over something, it literally shuts down the rational part because you have to think quickly because anger is always based on fear. And so you're anticipating something that's painful. And so anger is an emotion around fear. And the body needs to be able to, the organism, the human needs to be able to think quickly. Okay. And so it shuts down the rational, which is slower. Okay. It's got to think about memories, experiences, da, 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 da. So we don't want that. And I work with the guys I work with. We always talk about anger. I mean, we work through anger. What makes us angry? And there's antecedents. All right, so we got, and then sex. And most humans, especially I was going to say most human men, because we are different sexual creatures. We know that sex can shut down the rational part of the brain. Okay, anybody who's had infidelity, you shut down because you know that's against God's will, if you so believe. And you also know that there's a potential this is going to hurt my present partner, wife, girlfriend, whatever it may be.
Right.
So,
right.
And so if you're in treatment, you get a little treatment girlfriend, you're doomed. You're doomed. So we pretty much teach not to have relationships for the first year of sobriety. So those are the two. And what usually will happen is, first of all, coming out of treatment is difficult because you're so far behind the curve. You got to get a place to live. I mean, there's all these things you got to put into place to get just a semblance of being a contributing member of society. So it's difficult coming out of prison, coming out of treatment, because they're pretty much the same, literally. Inpatient treatment, you're quote unquote locked up. You can leave, and I've climbed the fence at a treatment center. Okay. Got a little money and like $200. And I had an obsession to use, so I climbed the fence and left. But anyway, so you get out and it can be difficult unless you got faith or you have a good program. And this is, and I love it. This is a Christian podcast. You don't have to be a Christian to get clean time. Okay. I would recommend it or have some faith, but you don't have to. But I just do what works, and I can just speak to what works for me. Okay. But anyway, that curve, that learning curve to become a contributing, I like that word, contributing member, society, is steep in the beginning because you're starting with nothing. I came out of prison in 2007 after 3 years with a box about this big, and it's all of the possessions I owned in the world, and $22.
And you got to figure it out.
But there are things that are available that can help you figure it out or help you create. I went to a halfway house, a 3/4 way house. So, I had an environment. It was very difficult to find a job. I had a job that paid me $190 a week. Yeah. And 150 went to the halfway house.
And I'm assuming that wasn't for food, right?
Right. Yeah, there's food there at the halfway house. Yeah.
Okay.
They provide the dinner. And then you can get a lunch to take with you.
Okay.
Because they want you to be successful. It's not.
Yeah.
But it didn't leave, and I owed money when I got out. It didn't leave a lot. You still got to get a bus pass. I mean, there was just a bunch.
Yeah.
But I stayed true to the course. And one of the beautiful things about not being without is that you enjoy the small things in life probably more. I mean, I would eat once every 2 weeks. I would treat myself to a meal. I was a burrito in Reno, Nevada. There's a place I would go, and they had these great burritos. That was my treat. Once every 2 weeks, $6. And it was to this day, one of the best meals I ever had. And I'm just going to put this out because I want people to hear this. I am a millionaire. Okay? I own 4 businesses. I have a 6-bedroom home in Ecuador. I have a beautiful house I just bought in November on 5 acres in the country for me and the family. I have other property in South America. I have very good income. I'm a millionaire. But sometimes meals aren't as good as that meal.
Hmm.
I can go to any meal. I can go to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. I can go to Morton's, but sometimes
Hmm.
the best meals I've ever had are with certain people, but also when I didn't have any money. And that was
Hmm.
such a treat. But
Hmm.
again, it's being humble and giving back. That's important to me today. But I still miss that. I hope I came
Yeah.
across.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all of our dreams are to be not all of our. So many people dream to be financially stable and get there, get where you're at.
You got
And
it.
it is interesting that it's in those times of struggle though, or whether it's financial or addiction or whatever it might be, that those little treats in the middle of the
Look,
struggle are the ones that stand out.
and let me say something. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday. So I mentor men all over the country. I sponsor guys also in the anonymous programs. And I was talking about gratitude. And I said, you know what my definition of gratitude is? And he's like, no, what is it? I said, my definition of gratitude is in spite of.
Mm,
In spite of.
mm, mm, mm. That's good.
Are you in gratitude to the Lord Jesus Christ? Are you in gratitude to God? In spite of.
Right.
It's easy when you get the big check or you get the inheritance or your daughter has a baby, these beautiful things that are happening.
Right.
But are you
Right.
grateful or are you in gratitude in spite of? And so when I get into what I call the tyranny of the now, that means my present has discomfort. I go into gratitude, I go into prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot to be grateful for. And if I didn't have anything in the temporal world to be grateful for, I have God. Remember I said, he said he's going to walk with me, and he has. I've walked through a death of a wife and two deaths of mothers, my biological and my
Adoptive.
adoptive mother. And I
Mm.
walked through those
Mm-hmm.
without
Mm-hmm.
picking up, without threatening anyone, without hurting anyone or hurting self. That's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. That's
Mm-hmm.
gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And especially considering the history leading up to all of those, right? For that not to be a response is incredible. Um, and we've been talking about it all along. Since we teased it, we do have to tell the broom closet story. Can you just tell kind of from there, maybe from like waking up in the broom closet and getting kicked out, to trying to sell that piece of crack that you had ended up being what got you into 3 years. So just tell
September.
us that story a little bit there.
Oh God! All right, I'm gonna give you a little longer version because I don't. It
Okay.
starts off the book, and it's such a pivotal point. I always say
Yes.
there's two pivotal points: September 22nd, 2004, and October 2004, when I had the communication with God. Those are the two pivotal points.
Yeah.
There's a couple others in that first year, but without either one of those, I wouldn't be here today. So September 22nd, I wake up in a broom closet of a rooming house that I had what we call a sugar daddy. I had a gentleman that I provided services for, and he allowed me to live there. It was a quid pro quo. And he allowed me to live there, but he had moved away, so I didn't have a place to stay. And my addiction was so bad at that point that I wasn't functioning well. My jaw's wired shut because I had my jaw broken
That's
twice
right.
in the month before. Um, I'm about 40 pounds less than I am. I have breakouts all over my face. I have every single finger is blistered. You've got to understand this. You got to picture this as blisters from trying to light the lighter to smoke crack cocaine. I have blisters on all my toes. I have a pair of sneakers on. I have no socks. I have a pair of shorts, no underwear, and a t-shirt. That's all of my possessions that I owned in the world. So I wake up. I didn't wake up. The landlord woke me up, me and the cockroaches, and I'm in this broom closet with the empty beer, with my crack pipe, my lighter. That's all I have. So I get kicked out. And I go there and I go to the library and I pass out underneath the microfilm machines at the library because I'm still tired. I wake up, I call my mother. I wasn't allowed in my mother's house because I had burglarized her. And, that was not very nice. One of the worst things I've ever done. And I told her, and what I had said before I got on the call, if I can't get this treatment, I'm going to kill myself. I'm done. And she said, I'll have a ticket for you. I'll leave at 6 because I want to go back up to Seattle because there's a free treatment center up there at Union Gospel Mission. And so all I had to do was make it from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock. But I needed some money for the bus trip because it's going to take 2 days and I had no food. And so I went to this drug dealer I knew, and I remember I was at the Americana Motel, 3rd floor, and had a couple beers, because I would get my beers. I'm going off the treatment. I'm still an addict and alcoholic. And I did a hustle, which all I did was I ran in between the drug dealer, and he paid me with a rock of crack cocaine. It's called a $10 rock. And I said, I'll sell this. I'll have $10. Understand this. In 21 years of using crack cocaine, there have only been 2 times in my whole life I didn't smoke every piece of crack in front of me. 2 times. Once I had food poisoning. I remember that. I can picture it right now. And this was the second time I had not smoked all. I had smoked so much crack, I OD'd, literally OD'd on smoking in LA. So I have this $10 rock. I go down to this one spot that I know. And there's another drug dealer working the street. And this guy beckons to sell. I say, hey, man, do you mind if I get this one? He said, go ahead, dog. Yeah, he knew me. He said, go ahead. And I go there to sell to the guy. And he's undercover. It's called the Street Enforcement Team for the Reno Police Department. And I always tell this story. I swear to God, when I sold it to him, the police came out like a manhole cover, okay? I swear to God, that's the way it seemed. So this is the key part. I'm arrested, and we have to wait for a paddy wagon. Somebody told me you shouldn't use the word paddy wagon. That's direct. Well, that's what it's called. It's called a paddy wagon, okay? I'm Irish. I'm Black Irish. Leave me alone. Okay? My mom was Irish. So anyway, I'm waiting for the paddy wagon because they're doing a sweep because they're coming up for this big weekend called Street Vibrations in Reno, Nevada, September 2004. Anyway, I'm waiting for the paddy wagon, and I'm crying. I am bawling. And the policeman comes to me because I got handcuffed, behind. If you ever see a movie and they get handcuffed up front, I don't know what country that is, but I have never been handcuffed up front in my life. Okay? Anyway, I'm handcuffed up back, and I'm leaning forward, and I'm just bawling. And the cop, are you all right? You all right? What's wrong? He's thinking, my jaw's wide shut. And I'll never forget, I told him, I said, I'm crying because I'm going to live. I'm going to live. This is good. This is God's grace. Literally, this was God's grace. Because I tell people all the time, the best thing ever happened to me. Literally, one of the best things that ever happened was I was arrested. And I went to prison for 3 years. And that's why I'm crying, because I cannot do the streets. I've been to the penitentiary twice before. I can do prison. Play pinochle, lift weights, walk the yard. And so I went in, and that was the day. And it's that, and then October came, and I've been well ever since. And I don't want to talk about that part, about wellness. And I hope the listener can understand where I'm coming from and why I say this. One of the things, when I sometimes I talk and I talk about what is the greatest sin, okay? And the greatest sin, as I've learned it, is the sin of pride. And it's literally above all. All other sins are a manifestation of the sin of pride. Because the sin of pride says, I am a God. That's what it says. I am a God unto thyself. Okay? And that was one of the reasons that, if you read Paradise Lost or Dante's Inferno with Paradise Lost, Satan was cast from heaven because he was an archangel because he wanted to be equal with God. That's not how it works, okay?
Yeah.
But that's what I do when I play God, okay? So I'm always looking at ego and hubris, okay? And I check myself, I evaluate myself, and because I don't want to be God anymore. I did at one point. When you're a drug dealer, there's many times you'll play God. I'm the judge, jury, and executioner. I'm God. Because you have a lot of power too, okay? And I'm going to go against that. But anyway, so what I want to say is that today I am well. I am well. And what does that mean? That means I'm competent to life. I'm competent to decisions I need to make as the husband and father of my family. I'm competent to my employees or staff members and contractors. I'm competent to my clients. I'm competent to life. I can deal with life. God and I can deal with anything. My best friend outside of my wife is dying as I speak. He is dying. I'm dealing with it. And I'll deal with it with grace. But the key part of being well, my relationship with God is good. My relationship with my wife is good. My relationship with friends, family is good. I don't know anyone that really hates me or dislikes me that I know of, but I'm sure there are. There are people I have affected from the past. If you bring up my name, it'll be a different conversation than what you're hearing here with me. But that's my past. That's not who I am presently. But this is the key thing. Because I am well, I can give out. I can give out.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that. I do that regularly. So that's one of the key. And this is the other thing. I don't spend a lot of time working on me because I only have so much time. I only have so much capacity, and I'm good. I have a book I'm writing right now as we speak called I'm Good with Good. I'm good with good. I don't need to be great. God is great. Lord Jesus Christ is great. I'm not great. I'm just a child of God, one of 7 billion that are in this temporal world. Okay.
Yeah. I want to transition a little bit to just talk about your mom, adoptive mom. I guess we'll clarify that. And it just sounds like she was an amazing person who was always with you, even when things weren't going well. Would you talk about your mom a little bit? And then I'd love to talk about kind of the grace that she showed to you and kind of the power that had through the years. So can you give us a little bit about your mom?
Sure. She's passed away, died in 2010. One of the most beautiful things that I've experienced was to be there when she passed. For years I wasn't there. And then when she got sick, I was there. I used to visit her almost every day. She had congestive heart failure. And then I would take her to her appointments, her Coumadin, things that she had to do. And I was there when she passed away. And that was what a gift that was. And so my mother was a very gentle, just beautiful person. What a blessing. So let me tell you the story about my adoptive mother. There's an agency in New York City called the Wyndham Agency. It's the oldest adoption agency in the United States, founded in the 1800s. And my mother and father, Sam and Irene, went to adopt a black child because my mother never had any kids. My father had 2 kids with a former marriage. They go there and they pick a child and start the paperwork. And I remember it was, I think, $1,800, which is, I just can't believe how much money that was in 1968. I mean, we had a 5-bedroom home that cost $25,000. Good God.
Right.
So, I mean, you could buy a brand new Volkswagen for $19.99. I remember that because they said that advertisement in 1969, 1970. Brand new Volkswagen, $2,000. So anyway, they're adopting a black child. And there's thousands of us, at least hundreds, if not thousands, in the New York foster care system. And she said, Kenneth, because she always called me Kenneth. She said, Kenneth, Sam was doing the paperwork on this other boy. And I was just leaving. She said they had this book. It's like a mug book. Each page would have 16 pictures, headshots of children. And I was just leafing through. And she said, Kenneth, I saw you. And I said, stop the press. And that's not the term my mom would use, but she said, stop the press. I want this one. And she pointed at me. And she adopts me. I cannot read. I cannot tell time. I cannot tie my shoes. I can't write because they weren't teaching me that. I'm in 1st grade. And that first summer, she sat me down and taught me how to read. My mother had a master's, postmaster's, and was working on her doctorate when my dad shot her. Okay? But anyway, she taught me how to read. And I hated it.
Wow.
I cried every day. I wanted to play. I don't want to sit there and look at 3x5 cards that say TH on them for learn phonetics. But I fell in love with reading. And she was artistic. She was a dancer. She was in a couple movies. She put out a record album. She danced for 40 years on Broadway and off Broadway, Chitlin Circuit, all that.
Wow.
And the key thing with my mom, and she was spiritual, especially in her last, 10, 20 years, especially after the shooting. That was transformational for her. Not in I hate to say not in a positive way, but it was transformational for her. And she became much, much more. She went into the Unity Church later on. And, but very spiritual. And she, what is that? I just want to give her honor. So there's a thing called, what's the love that has like no boundary? What do we call it?
Oh,
it's mainly mothers.
Just unconditional love?
Unconditional.
Okay.
Perfect. So there's a thing called unconditional love. And there's a great book by a Christian author named David Blankenhorn called Fatherless in America. And he talks about the difference between men and women. And I'm a big believer in differences between men and women. And he talks about mothers have unconditional love. It's like built in. Whereas men have conditional love in societies throughout the history of this world. I still always recommend that book to a lot of my guys. And His Needs, Her Needs is another Christian Facebook. It's fantastic. I had to look at marriage because I had some difficulties in my marriage and I needed to modify my behavior. But I had to understand my behavior first. At least I chose to. I could have just modified, but I'd rather understand things. So anyway, my mom had unconditional love.
Yeah.
And, she chose me. And plus she saw me. She saw me and said, I was this beautiful child. So the name of my book is Becoming Ken. I had different names on the street and in the penitentiary. Okay? Some I can say on the show, some I can't. But I had different names. Yeah. Okay? And I just wanted to become Ken. Story, 1998, I'm in a meeting of the Anonymous Programs, Reno Triangle Club, And I'm sitting somewhere in the back. I'm struggling with my addiction. I'm still in it. And a guy's up front talking. And he said, I am a kind and gentle man today. And I literally almost fell out of my seat. Because on the streets in the penitentiary, we don't use that term.
Hmm.
And I like, man, could I ever become a kind and gentle man? And I am. I am a kind and gentle man. I mean, I've had things happen to me since that I could be unkind. But I'm like, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Are you in gratitude? Yeah, they stole 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever the amount that something happened financially. Move on. Look at the blessings you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was one of the, and this is, I'll end with this. So you have a mother and you have an opinion of a mother. And you're like, it's because she's my mom. Elliot, I've talked to 2, 3, 5 people who have come to me, and I talked to as an adult, and they would say, Ken, you had the nicest mother. She was one of the most kind, giving people I've ever met. I'm thinking it's just me has that opinion, but believe me, there are.
Yeah.
I haven't met a person yet. I haven't, and I'm sure there are. My mom had to make hard decisions. She ran schools of nursing, and people might have had an interaction that wasn't positive with her, but she would never do it to hurt you on purposely.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
My mom never drank. She used profanity one time. One time I can remember.
That is awesome. Part of what amazed me about your story is it sounds like, obviously you're not telling 21 years day to day in your book, but when you would call your mom and say, I need to get home to get clean. I need, and she's sending you off to Mississippi where there's a great program. I just kind of kept hearing over and over how your mother never gave up on you and how that there was always hope. And it sounds like her life was maybe not driven by hope because there's a lot of tragic things that happened as well. Can you just speak into do you know what it was about your mom that never gave up hope on you? I guess that's the question I'm trying to ask. Like, did you ever get any inclination as to what drove that? Because at some point, I know me as a dad, I'd be like, look, I love you and I accept you and I want you, but if you're going to continue in this lifestyle, I can't continue to facilitate this kind of thing, right?
That's conditional.
And again, I'm trying to do it because I'm yes. Can you talk a little bit about, it wasn't the unconditional thing. If that was it, then this is a short question answer.
2 things.
Yeah.
1, my mother loved me. She knew what was inside me. You understand? I was a mama's boy. I hung out with her because my dad was violent. I didn't want to be around him. And in a way, not that I feel bad, I wish we were closer because I made amends. I forgave my father. Before he died, I could sit down with him. This is after he shot my mom. And we would talk as men. Okay, that was important that I do that too. I cried when he died. If you told me I was going to cry when my dad died, I'd have laughed at you. You must be out your mind. But I did. Okay. He wasn't all bad. And I understand him now. I could talk about that for an hour about relationship with my father. But for my mother, she loved me. And I truly believe that she had a spiritual communication with God that stated that this is the role as a mother. Remember, she took a role as a mother. That's a role. She wasn't my biological mother. And I did get to meet my biological mother, years later, before she passed away. I got 2 years with her, but I might have seen her 5 times. But that was beautiful too. But God is so good. And I could forgive her because I was angry at her for a lot of years because I didn't know the story. I didn't know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, you have love and you have spiritual. There's a spiritual aspect to her choice. A lot of people would have let go. And there would, believe me, bro, there was a time she had to let go. She chose to let go. I was in the penitentiary. I call her because I call her. So in the penitentiary, you get 10 people you can put on your call list that will accept your calls because it's a collect call. And I only had 2 people in the world that would accept my calls. Anyway, she was obviously the main one. So I called her, and you're in what I call the rotunda, and there's other guys on the phone. And she said, Kenneth, XYZ happened. I need a break. I need a break from you. I can't deal with this emotionally, this thing. And the crazy thing is I didn't do it. 99% of the time I did it, okay? It was my cousin. In fact, it was my cousin who's dying. He did it, but she thought I had done it, okay? And I still give him a hard time about that. We laugh a lot. I took him to his first NA meeting. Oops, I'm supposed to say. But yeah, I took him to his first anonymous program meeting. And I remember she says, so I need to end this call and, call me back in like 3 months. I used to call like once a week. And I got off and I was crying. In prison, I'm crying. And the other men looked at me. Nobody said a thing. Because you don't know why I'm crying. My daughter might have been hit by a car. My wife might have told me that she's divorcing me and taking the kids. And I got 6 more years to do. You don't know why I'm crying when I get off that phone. So we always respect a man, who has some emotion, there. Now, if you're crying on the basketball court, we're going to look a little askance. Or your pinochle hand was bad. No, I didn't get my melt. No, that ain't going to work. But coming off that phone, and so guys didn't say nothing to me, and I went back to my bunk, cried some more, and called her back in 3 months. She had found out what really had happened, because she can't call me. But she just had that unconditional love. She still loved me even then. Yeah. She just needed to protect herself. Okay.
Yeah. Which, yeah.
I mean, let me put it this way. Remember, I wasn't allowed in her home.
Right.
Because I had burglarized her home. Not only did I burglarize her home, I took her pills, like her sleeping pills, and then tried to commit suicide. So for her to get a call from the hospital trying to find out what the pills were, because I'm damn near in a coma, what a call about your only child tried to kill themselves from your drugs because he's burglarized your home. So she had, and there's stuff I don't even know that she knows or heard about me. Yeah. Never will. I'm cool with that. Yeah. I'm cool with it. Because again, at the end, her last couple of years, I get out in 07, she died in 10. For 2 of those years, I was there 5 days a week, spending time with her, loving on her. And I had done the forgiveness. She didn't forgive me. She never, there was nothing to forgive on her end, but we would talk about certain situations, Wow. And I just can't tell you how beautiful that was. Yeah. What a gift.
Yeah.
that was.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. That was exactly what a gift and how beautiful. That is incredible.
Oh,
Hey, I'm
that's what I
gonna.
meant to say. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, yeah.
The
It's okay.
gift, one of the gifts, the day she gave me the key to her home,
Mm.
and I'm like, because remember, I wasn't allowed in there. Now, once I got out of prison, remember, I'd done 3 years. We've been talking, and I could come by, but I'd ring the doorbell, da da da, and she's like, Kenneth, here, take this key, and you can come by, or if I'm here, I don't have to get up because you just come in.
Yeah. Wow.
I'd tell, hey mom, I'm coming over, on a Saturday or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
That was
That's.
a key.
Yeah.
A key.
Yeah. 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 But it just shows so much, right? It shows reconciliation. It shows trust. It shows care. It shows it wasn't about the convenience of I don't have to walk to the door and open it for you. It was just that picture of
But that's what you
I'm
wanted.
back again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is I didn't go into this. I don't know how people will take it, but I'm at a point in my journey, I don't really care how you take it. So she was sick. I flew down from Anchorage, spent a few days with her. I chuckle because she's dying of congestive heart failure. And we're watching The Blob, Steve McQueen, The Blob. Because I had grown up, he used to come on every year, once a year, upstate New York. I'd watch The Blob, Steve McQueen. Anyway, we're watching The Blob, but when you have congestive heart failure, you get very tired. She would just keep nodding out every once in a while. And then she wakes up and she looks over me. She said, Kenneth, I want pizza. I want a pizza. And I'm like, Mom, you can't have pizza because it's part of the diet. You can't have pizza. I thought about it. What are you saying? Okay, Mom, I'll go get you a pizza.
Yeah.
And I went out and got her the pizza. And she had like maybe 2 bites. And I had half of it. She had like 2 bites. But that's what she wanted. Yeah. Then the next morning she said, Kenneth, here's the credit card. Go get a blue blazer. She always was about me dressing well. So I had to get a navy blue blazer because that's a part of a uniform in the corporate world. And so I went down to Macy's and I got this Ralph Lauren blue blazer, which is in a closet 5 feet away from me. This is November 2010, November 10th, 2010. And I come back from Macy's and she said, I'm ready. And I'm like, ready for what? She said, I'm ready. I'm ready to be with Dennis, be in heaven with her ex-husband, who she loved. This is after Sam. And he had died like 15 years before, 95. And I was like, okay. And she had already planned out an assisted suicide with her doctor. And she was a nurse. So all the nurses came in. There's like 5 of them. They were all instructors at the School of Nursing. And we had an assisted suicide. And I helped her. And because that's what she wanted. And the thing is, the key part I want to tell you, because remember, she's going to heaven. And she's going to be with Dennis, who's in heaven. And she wanted to make sure I was all right. And she had seen for 3 years, I'm all right. I'm all right. And so she can now go. She doesn't need to be on, this is temporary, this temporal world. She doesn't need to be there. So, it took about 4 or 5 hours, but we were there and I told stories and she, diminished from this world. And she passed away and you call the coroner and I said some prayers and I went to a meeting, anonymous meeting that night. They had a what they call a marathon. And at 12 o'clock, I spoke, talked to my sponsor, and went into prayer. Did the same thing I did when my wife died. I have a way I deal with death.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very comfortable with death. I've seen a lot of it on the streets. I lost 21 people in about a 2-year period on the streets, dead.
Oh, wow.
21.
Wow.
Murdered, suicide, drug overdose, esophageal hemorrhaging, cirrhosis of the liver. I can just go on. That was my world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the beautiful thing is she's in a good place. And sometimes people say to me, I bet your mom would be proud of you. Or I was like, yeah, I'm sure she would.
She is.
Because I do a lot of good things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a couple of times she would be like, Kenneth, don't do that. But now it's God talking.
Yeah.
A couple tears in my eyes.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for sharing so much of your story today. It's been so great. I do have one final question for you as we close up here. What's one thing that's exciting you right now? What's maybe something happened in your family, book, work, life, Bible verse? Just one thing, when you think about it, it just puts a smile on your face. Maybe it's your grandchild that grabbed your hand when they're going down the stairs. But what is that one thing you think, oh man, that always makes me happy?
Oh man, you gotta like this one. So I have the 2.5-year-old. His name is Sage, but I've nicknamed him Boo Boo. I said, you will be Boo Boo until you're 18. Okay, I'm just gonna let you know that now. So at nighttime, I'll be in bed, and he usually hangs out with, his mother. I mean, with the grandmother, my wife, 98% of the time. But a lot of times at nighttime, he'll come in, climb up on the bed, and go, Tom and Jerry? Tom and Jerry? And so I'll grab my phone, and we'll sit there, and he'll get underneath the covers, and he'll put his head on my little shoulder, and we'll watch Tom and Jerry, which I hadn't seen in 50 years.
Right.
And he is so happy and so comfortable, watching. And I mean, we've done this probably 30, 40, 50 times. Tom and Jerry?
That's
Tom and
so
Jerry?
good. That is so good.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
It always puts a smile on my face.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love it. That is perfect. That is grandkids. Yeah. They're meant to put smiles on our face. That's, I think that's God's gift to parents who survive parenting. So, well, Ken, again, thank you so much for being part of the Live Faith First podcast. Really appreciate your story and for you sharing that with us. And for everybody out there today, let's all go live faith first. Hey, you're still there. That means you enjoyed that conversation we just had with Ken. My goodness, what a story. And so you can go check out his book, Becoming Ken. And there are so many more things that I'm sure you will enjoy reading and learning and really hearing how God has showed up in his life. But here's my one thing that we'd love to know. So put it in the comments below is, what's one thing you're grateful for in spite of? That really stuck out to me, that grateful in spite of the circumstances or what might have just happened to you. So put down in the comments, what's one thing you're grateful for in spite of? All right, everybody, let's go live faith first.